Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. We're now about to begin. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this forum. And this forum is organized by the election committee members of the legal sector. And this evening, of course, we are very happy to have the two candidates with us, Mr. K.H. Wu and Mr. John Tsang. Of course, the third candidate, Mrs. Lam, has indicated that she's not going to attend this forum. And the organizers have been very thoughtful and kept a seat for her just in case she changes her mind. Can I invite first Mr. Edward Chen on behalf of the organizers to say a few words. Edward, please.
Thank you, Ambrose. Members of the profession, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, today we are going to hold our EC Candidate Forum. Members of the profession, you probably remember that when we stand for election as the election committee members of the legal functional constituency, we have pledged our promise to hold this forum for you so that everyone of our profession would have the opportunity of asking the candidates who entered into this election for the CE for their views and understand their platforms much better. And for this reason, we are holding this forum today. We realized that many of us had already had the opportunity of meeting the two candidates and might have already had some opportunities of asking them questions. But of course, since the time available in the previous encounters are rather limited, we feel that we should nevertheless hold today's CE forum so as to enable members of our constituency to have a better opportunity of understanding the platforms and the various promises and various policies that each candidate has promised to implement if they are elected as the chief executive of the Hong Kong SAR. And today we are very grateful to Mr. Ambrose Ho, who very kindly agreed to be the moderator. And Mr. Ho obviously is not a member of any political party. He is not a member of either the Podem group or the Pandem group. So he is not, in fact, one of the persons with any vote in the CE election.
In other words, a nobody.
But what I think that we can all trust is the integrity of Mr. Ho, and we think that he would certainly hold this forum as the moderator and would be acting very fairly for both candidates. Mr. Ho would in due course introduce this forum, the rules that we must observe for the rest of the evening. Without further ado, may I simply leave the floor back to Mr. Ho so that we can sort of waste no time, because after all, time is very precious, and the opportunity for any encounter with the candidate is so limited. So please make good use of the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. This evening we've got a packed program. Let me just give you a brief rundown of what's going to happen. Soon we're going to have a session of self-introduction by the two candidates. They will be given about 3 minutes each to explain to you their platform and so on. 3 minutes.
5.
Oh, you want 5? All right.
It said
then 5. This is very flexible. All right, 5. And just now we've drawn lots. So in this session, KH will go first. and then John will be second. After the self-introduction session, then there'll be questions by the EC members. I understand they have already put their questions somewhere, and we're going to draw lots for them to ask their questions. After that, there'll be a session for questions to be asked between the candidates, so they can fire questions to their opponents. For that session, I understand that the rules is that the candidate hosting the session will be able to stop the other side from speaking. Let's see how that goes. So each will host 5 minutes, and then the other take turn. After that, there will be a session of question and answer, and that will be open to the floor. I hope that many of you will be able to ask questions. There will be a session of about 30 minutes. And then last, there will be closing remarks by the candidates. Again, tentatively, we put down 3 minutes, but if the candidate says 5, we are happy. The order will be reversed, so in the closing remarks, John will go first, and then followed by KH. And then there will be closing remarks from me, and then that be end. All right? Okay, so without more ado, can we go into the introduction, self-introduction, 5 minutes, and we have KH first. KH, please. Yes.
Can we start? Please. Yes. Fellow lawyers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to be amongst peers. I'll set out my policy agenda to you in the language we know best in terms of legal provisions. Let us focus on our mini-constitution, the basic law. Article 45 states, inter alia, that the ultimate aim is the selection of the chief executive by universal suffrage. The aim has been clearly set out, and we need only to follow the method specified, which is to be in the light of the actual situation in the HKSAR and in accordance with the principle of gradual and orderly progress. A 3-member government working group led by you-know-who failed dismally in 2014 to implement this provision. Hence, 20 years after our reunification with Mother China, little progress has been made. Our next CE will be handpicked on Sunday by just 1,194 votes or electors, and that is a far cry from the universal suffrage promised. The people, especially the young ones, are so frustrated that they have lost faith in our political system. I stepped forward as a CE candidate last October. Since then, I've seen my fellow judges caught in contentious trials stemming from Occupy syndrome. Our society is so polarized that legislators were disqualified and young protesters and police officers alike sent to jail. Our government has virtually been reduced into a lame duck by a dysfunctional legislature. Unlike the 2 other nominees, I consider political reform a priority. We have no option but to honor the people's collective aspirations in the form of open and equitable ballots. The alternative is social disturbance. We cannot hide our heads in the sand and pretend grievances will dissipate without a major surgery on our electoral system. The best way forward, I consider, is to enlarge the electoral role of the present election committee from 250,000 to 1 million, so that this election committee can act as a nominating committee with a proper mandate for electing the CE in 2022 by universal suffrage. Another 5 years down the road, the electoral base can be further expanded to cover all the 3.5 million or so eligible voters. The process will also pave the way for the abolition of the legical functional constituencies. Without such changes, any talks about social harmony and economic development will remain empty words. After the initial reform is achieved, we can proceed to deal with a thorny stipulation, that's Article 23. Under the article, Hong Kong is obliged to legislate for national security under the notion of one country. We have failed to discharge this constitutional duty for 2 decades. There is a risk that Beijing may lose patience and impose its own national security laws on the SAR via Annex 3 of the Basic Law pursuant to its Article 18. When we enact the law, we can take control by incorporating the human rights safeguards in Articles 27 and 39 as measures to avoid harshness of the local legislation for Article 23. Meanwhile, we should make the best out of Article 22. It affirms that no departments of the central government, etc., may interfere in the affairs which the HKSAR administers on its own in accordance with this law. We should codify this constitutional statement into an actionable local criminal law. The idea is to use this to bolster the promise of 2 systems and high autonomy for the HKSAR. I will argue as an example to ban organized and systematic efforts on the part of any mainland Chinese mission personnel in Hong Kong to mobilize resources to promote or prejudice the election of candidates. Such and other details can be hammered out through a proper consultation with the stakeholders, including Beijing. If we tackle Articles 22, 23, 27, 39, and 45 right, we can hopefully put Hong Kong back onto the right track. We lawyers shall, of course, have a major role to play to do it right. We simply can't afford the luxury of not to do so. Thank you.
Okay, just slightly overrun his time, but I'll allow that. Now it's John. Please, you have 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I must first of all apologize for the absence of a volunteer in my election office because of the load of work that I have left for him. I'm told that many of you are quite disappointed that Chung is not here tonight. I shall inform him. But frankly, I have been rather mortified and indeed traumatized for days on end before attending this legal sector debate this evening, arguing my case with a former High Court judge in front of a gathering of elite legal professionals. So you will appreciate why I'm feeling humble and somewhat intimidated tonight in your presence. But this is an election campaign, and I do need your support. So I shall give it my best effort. Today marks the 63rd day of my election campaign, and D-Day is just 4 days away. After declaring my candidacy for the CE election, many people have asked me, how can we heal the rift in our society? How can we narrow the gap between the rich and the poor? How am I overly confident in seeking to reach consensus on political reform after the dismal attempt in 2014? Or am I too ambitious to even attempt to handle Article 23 as well? Well, indeed, in the past few years, our society has seen massive discord, and the polarization that has resulted is worrying. We need to restore harmony in Hong Kong in order for us to move forward, both in terms of public governance and economic development. And that is why I have chosen as my guiding principle the concepts of convergence of hearts, proactive enablement. And let me elaborate a little on this very point. It's clear to me that the job of the Chief Executive of Hong Kong is not exactly a week in Phuket. It is extremely challenging, and it's not easy for anyone. No matter who wins the election, I think everyone here would agree that rebuilding trust, reestablishing unity, and rekindling hope must be the priority for the next government. And this is what I mean by convergence of hearts. To ensure that we can successfully realize these 3 basic beliefs that underlie my election manifesto, the Chief Executive, together with his government, must seek to safeguard the rule of law, the key building block of Hong Kong's success, along with other key core values of Hong Kong. To uphold the rule of law, it is equally important that the judiciary must remain independent of the other branches of government. This guarantee is enshrined in the Basic Law and jealously guarded by all of us here in Hong Kong. The rule of law, as we are all aware, is also fearlessly and rigorously protected by a hugely vocal media sector. Hong Kong's open economy has served us well, and I'm committed to maintaining and safeguarding a level playing field for all economic activities in Hong Kong. Proactive enablement means creating a favorable environment to allow different sectors to develop, and it should not be construed as some clever pretense to provide subsidy for any particular sector. It's just a way for us to empower certain sectors with good potential to progress further. I plan to increase resources to promote applied science research in our institutions in the further development of fintech. I intend to set up a financial technology research institute to develop specifically applicable financial technology on network security and blockchain, and open the platform to relevant sectors such as financial and trade so that they do not need to bear the development risks. I believe also that education is the best investment in society can make for its future and the most powerful equalizer in our society. And I've stated that we should empower schools to manage their own affairs instead of micromanaging them from TMAR. We should revise and update the school curriculum to relieve examination pressure on students and parents and introduce a stronger STEM element to prepare our students for a more technology-based future. I believe that Hong Kong must remain a world city because in this role, we bring unique value to our nation. We shall ride on the growth of the mainland, apply our singular characteristics as the only open city in China, and build on our sound economic structure to make the best of the opportunities that's available to us. I also believe that Hong Kong needs a chief executive who has international vision and network, who has the support from a full width of the political spectrum, and who can bring together the most capable and passionate public servants to serve in this government. With my vision, my experience, my ability and personality, I'm confident, ladies and gentlemen, that I can lead Hong Kong on the right track to economic development, better livelihood, and a more harmonious society. Thank you.
Thank you, John.